Hey there, fellow horse lovers. Welcome back finally to the Daily Ride podcast. My name is Morgan. I'm your host, and today I have a really exciting interview with Dr. Todd Frisch of Why the Face. He shares how we can read human faces, much like we have talked about reading horse faces and horse whorls, to help give us insight into who someone is in their personality, their abilities, and their temperament. But before we get into it, I've got some really exciting news. True Heart Healing, my nonprofit that this podcast supports, is now officially a 501c3. That means that every donation you make is tax deductible. And starting now, this work is 100% powered by you and is focused on serving not just veterans and children with disabilities, but everyone in our community. If this podcast has ever made you think differently, feel seen, or connect more deeply with horses, or even just brought a little more joy or calm into your day, I'm asking you to take one small step to keep it going. Donate just $1. Seriously, $1. Because when this horse community shows up together, we create something so much bigger than just the sum of our parts, like real programming, healing, and connection for our whole community. We're building opportunities for one-on-one sessions. We're hosting horse experiences. We're providing educational talks and even more content. But none of this can happen without your support. So I've made it as easy as possible to donate to True Heart Healing. Click the link in the show notes below or head to www.truehearthealing.org to donate. And if you can't give financially right now, there are other free ways to help support True Heart Healing. Every new subscriber, like, comment, or share helps push this content at the Daily Ride out to others who need to hear it. That's because True Heart Healing is on a mission to help leverage the healing power of equine partnership and the joy of equine companionship to support and empower all individuals to build stabilizing relationships in their lives, facilitate learning and personal growth, find hope, and discover their purpose. So from True Heart, myself, and the True Heart Healing Board, thank you so much for being a part of this journey. I also want to say that I really appreciate your patience as my listeners. I know there was a really large unplanned gap to go between the last episode that I released this past spring and now this one. And that's because learning video editing software and hardware is a brand new skill set for me. So I wanted to extend my thanks to you for your patience and your encouragement. And I'm excited to keep learning and improving with each episode that I release. Now, this interview was especially exciting for me because of the connection to reading horse whorls and face shape and what it can tell us about a horse's temperament and their natural tendencies, because turns out it's actually possible to do with humans too. So, of course, I had to get my own face read, and I read the book on learning how to do this myself. Dr. Frisch is a master of his craft and is also a wonderfully kind human being to share his time and knowledge with us by coming on the podcast. So please check out his work at WTF.whytheface.com to order his book. It's wonderful. Have your face read or learn to read faces for yourself through one of his classes.
Yeah, I was fascinated by this diagnostic potential of a hair pattern on a horse. It was interesting when I did a face, and the individual was a criminal, and he had what's called upper sympacu, which means white three sides, and it's white on the top. Mm-hmm. And the people that have white on the top of their eyes, I didn't take them as patients. They're not right in the head. They usually have lots of serious mental issues. And so somebody wrote back in the comments about this criminal that had upper sympacu that her father was kind of a horse whisperer, and he would not deal with horses that you could see the whites in the top of their eye.
Interesting.
Fascinating that you could not control them. They were absolutely unpredictable.
Wow. I haven't heard anything about that. I've been blessed to, I guess I should back up. I didn't know anything about whorls either until I got my current horse, True Heart. And she is unusual because her whorl is more like a mule. You kind of expect the stubbornness, the difficulty, but there's this great quote that says you have to treat a mule the way that you should be treating your horse. And I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
happened to
What
stumble
does that
across
mean?
world reading and learning that she's an introvert, and a very sensitive introvert, a very intelligent, sensitive introvert, changed everything with my relationship with her and how I connect with her. And it kind of made sense. Like in a previous life, I'm an engineer now, but I used to be a special ed teacher. And that was like the first thing you have to know is how your students learn, because we're all
Sure,
wired
sure.
differently. So I'm
Absolutely.
like, okay, now that I
Absolutely.
know what horse I'm working with and what matters to her and how she's going to process this information, we can be more effective and quit fighting with each other and quit annoying each other.
Yeah. Knowing where someone is. And, in working with patients, it was very important for me to take the patient from where they were to where I wanted them to be rather than starting at some lofty situation. Just dance with the music in front of you and you'll have better success.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got your book and I've been picking my way through it over the last month or so.
Thank
But
you.
for my listeners' benefit, do you mind just walking through a quick bio of yours so I don't miss anything important?
Yeah. So, as a physician, we're trained to ask what's wrong, and I get that. And yet, if you have any degree of intellectual honesty as a doctor, you're going to have that patient that something's wrong, they know something's wrong, and all their tests are textbook midline normal. So I had this paradigm shift early in my career that maybe I need to ask what's not right instead of what's wrong. It sounds like semantics, but you literally in the world of medicine, you got to be two-thirds sick before those tests show anything wrong. Now, once you cross that line, the disease is then diagnosed, and you start your decision tree from that aspect. The problem was I would have this patient at the end of my career. This gal, she had anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue syndrome. She had fibromyalgia, she had insomnia, and she had weird rashes all over her body, and everything was normal. So, obviously the answer is 20 milligrams of Prozac. And I just thought, I got a problem with that. Maybe there's something we can do. So when I shifted from the what's wrong mentality, because the medical data said nothing was wrong, obviously, therefore, we as men in front of a female patient will assign as a mental case, and we don't do that to men because we'll get punched out. But we feel we can do that with a female. I'm a militant feminist, just to be upfront. I just think women get hosed in the world of medicine. But um, I had this shift, and it was enlightening and kind of terrifying because you had to abandon your belief system, and that's never comfortable in any situation. But I then began a search to try to figure out what's not right. Well, there's really nothing out there in medicine. So I began the search down all these weird pathways. I studied astrology. I studied Galen's Four Humors. I studied Jungian psychology. I got into Ayurvedic medicine, the three doshas, the Vata, Pitta, Kapha. I got deeply into traditional Chinese medicine simply because there were so many books out there. And I'm a bucket face. You have some bucket quality. We can get into that as we go. But I love to put things in my bucket. I love to learn. So if there was a lot of books, it was heaven, nirvana for me. So I dug deep, and I found this book in the early 80s called Secrets of the Face by a gal named Young. Interesting book. Needed an editor badly. Was not well written, but it had these 9 face shapes in there. I was intrigued by this thing. And just because I had a different take on how to work with patients, I looked at them differently. It just opened this door, and it grew from there to the point. I wrote a book with my daughter. I just finished a second book with my wife, and my retirement didn't take. I now read faces kind of all day long, which is okay. I can live with that. It's a fun thing.
Very cool. Yeah. So this Why the Face book that I received from you was with your daughter. And
Yes,
speaking of how things kind of change and evolve over time, one of the things that stuck out to me is how you mention in here how your daughter's face has changed over
sure.
time,
Yeah. Not
specifically
only
becoming a mother.
Yeah, exactly. Not only do faces change, they should change. If nothing changes, you're in what in Chinese medicine is the ultimate bad term. You're stagnant. You're not moving one way or the other, and it's just not a good thing. Stagnation is a term they use over and over in traditional Chinese medicine. So if you have liver stagnation, well, what does that mean? Well, it means you're going to have muscle spasms. It means you're going to have headaches. It means you're going to talk with your hands and kind of talk with an angry tone, because there's this stuck energy in your liver, and the emotion of the liver is anger. So it just kind of, it just evolved into a diagnostic entity that was unreal. And we all do facial diagnosis. If you come out in the morning, you look at your husband or your child, and you go, "You okay today? Something bothering you? Well, what did you see that morning you didn't see the morning before?" So we all do facial diagnosis, and it's to put legs to it, I think, has great value. There's a universality to face reading. I'm now being asked to open the door into the world of business, and what my face shape being a bucket head, where do I fit best in a company? Well, I need to be in research because I love to think. You have a king quality. So you got to be in leadership. You suck at not leading, to be honest with you. You just, it's part of who you are. And yet you have some bucket quality like I have. So you love to think. And then you got the real narrowness to your chin, which is that fire, that sensitivity. It is a remarkable face. And the thing, Morgan, that's so important to understand is these face shapes are a gift from our creator. But these gifts, and they truly are a gift, come with a caveat. You must use this gift to help mankind, but also to honor your creator. So your gifts are intellect, leadership, and sensitivity. Powerful combination. I'd hire you in a heartbeat for any job in the company that I was running, simply because you have the leadership ability, the thoughtfulness, and yet the sensitivity. It is quite a remarkable combination and quite rare.
Well, thank you.
I'm trying not to blow smoke here, but I'm just telling you.
I
And
appreciate
I don't think
that.
I'm telling you anything that you don't already know. You know this about yourself.
First of all, I was delighted at the level of detail. I found you scrolling after work on social media. I'm not on TikTok. You've made your way onto Facebook and Instagram. And I was
I've
like,
never been there, but I understand I'm there.
well, your face is there.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is fascinating to me. This is so much like world reading. I have to reach out. I'm so curious about this. And so when I requested, I contacted you for this interview, but then I requested the face reading. First of all, you got it back to me in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And then I was
don't, I'm in trouble.
floored to see how much detail is in that. And of course, I had to, I'm close with my parents. I showed it to my mom and dad. And my mom was like, "Oh my gosh, did you already interview him? How does he know?" And now she finds this hilarious. And every time I ask a question, she says, "Stop being such a bucket face."
You
But
cannot be those things, though.
it's
That's
really
just how it works.
powerful. Yeah, and I
It
love how
is.
you frame it in such a way that this is a gift and you need to use it. Something
You
common
got to
in my
use your
family.
gift to honor mankind. It is
Yeah.
what it's all about, and it's there's nothing on the face that doesn't give us a message on some level, and being able to read the face and understand the message that's out there. I remember when we invaded Kuwait, and our tanks were going down this 6-lane highway, and they had these green road signs, and they had these squiggly lines on there. It was Arabic, and I'm thinking, I have no idea what those words mean, because they're written in Arabic. And then I was writing the book on facial diagnosis, or at least not formally, but in my head it was being, and I realized, it's just a language, and it's like, if you don't know how to read Arabic, you can't read those signs. But if somebody teaches you how to read Arabic, then you can get from A to B, or the same color signs as we have on our highways in the States, that green signs that we see on the roadway. So, when I put it in that perspective, it's just a language, and I'm really, really good at reading a face. But I've done it for 45 years, and people are
Yeah.
intimidated when they're starting to learn this thing, and they think, "Oh, I can't be Frisch." And I go, "Well, of course you can. I got 45 years on you." So don't even try to, don't get in a contest with me, because I'm been doing this too long. but it can be learned, and everybody can learn, and everybody's already doing it. And then to take it to the next level, I think is pretty exciting, And I at this point in my life, I don't have to win a pissing contest. We grow up and we go through these, and this is back to Jungian psychology, the athlete, the warrior, the statesman, and the sage. Um, we all start as the athlete. It's all about us and how we look. And I used to watch my son in front of the mirror with his baseball bat and looking cool. And we pass through that it's all about me phase into the warrior phase, which is you want to conquer. And that's where people get married, they buy houses, they establish jobs. But you reach a point in Jungian psychology where you go, life's more than this. You got to give back. And that's where the statesman's phase comes into play. But the last, I call it the wizard because I like it better than sage. But the last stage is when you realize the power is in your mind. And I've touched it and I've tasted it a number of times to the point like I want to be there. If you think you're there, you're no longer there. That's the weird part. It is such a high spiritual evolvement that it's a remarkable thing. And again, I've tasted it a couple of times, and I want to pig out on it. And I can't get there. But I think in my point in my life, I want to be that individual that shares everything they know with everyone they know, and it's a good place to be.
Yeah, teaching. We collect knowledge as buckets. Maybe that's part of the gift, is being able to use our bucket to pour into others.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that though comes some skepticism, and I've certainly gotten this from my horse world reading. It's kind of seen as woo woo, or I think in people it's even more. When I've mentioned this to some friends and family, and excitement for this interview, they've been like, well, what are you talking about? Or what the example you used a few moments ago, like your kid comes out in the morning and you're like, oh, something's off. How do you suss out, you're puffy because you ate a bag of chips, or you're getting congested and you have a cold, versus what's actually on someone's face? And how do you tackle that skepticism that I'm sure you receive from people?
Oh yeah. And, to give you the lineage of me as a physician was, I started as a quack, and I had a different way of thinking, different way of looking at things that wasn't accepted by the masses. So obviously you're a quack. And I didn't like being called a quack, but I also realized I was helping people, and I really enjoyed the journey I was on. So we progressed from those of us that did this kind of thinking. And you're kind of in that quack label with horses. Okay, let's put us on the same trajectory. Yep. The next thing we were called was alternative medicine. Well, you can do this or you can do this. You had to make a choice, and I had as equal disdain for alternative as I did quack. And then we morphed into complementary medicine. We actually complemented the medical world. As it was done, big pharma and that whole monstrosity, and I use that word with intent. And then we all practiced CAM, which is complementary and alternative medicine. And we took CAM conferences and that kind of stuff. Well, then medicine says, look, there's value here. We're going to take you in. And they integrated us, and we all practiced integrative medicine. And again, I have disdain for that word. And that has finally evolved into what we are now practicing, which is called functional medicine. Again, equal disdain for functional, integrative, complementary, CAM, alternative, quack. What we practice, the people that think like I think, we practice restorative medicine. We want to restore people back to a place they should have never left in the first place. And once you establish that as your starting point, I had two overriding philosophies when I worked with a patient. One was remove the obstacle to the cure. What's blocking this person from getting well? Secondly is you got to know where to hit it. Where do you start? And that's where facial diagnosis gave me that starting point when I would see deep creases like I have right here. And I got a little 10th muscle right here. And I got one-sided headaches, and I talk loud and I talk with my hands. So I know my liver is stuck, and I've got to do things to help the liver do what it's supposed to do.
That's really
So
interesting. So you kind of turned it
it
on
gave me
yourself.
look, I did this on everyone. I
Mm,
didn't tell people in the beginning. I did enough things differently that I felt if I really shared what I was really doing with people, I would remove all doubt from their mind that I'm crazy and they wouldn't come back. And you can't help them if they don't walk through your door. So I didn't share a lot, but as it just evolved, and my wife was the first to point this out. I used to say, do you have a problem here? Do you have any issues with this? Does this bother you?
mm,
And she said, it just morphed into, you have a problem here. This is bothering you. I didn't even know I had made that transition. It was a pretty fascinating moment. I love that word moment in my life to realize I had transitioned from using it on a very clinical, logical, left brain kind of energy, and I watched it shift into this knowingness, this super awareness, and this connectiveness to an individual. And I began using the words that I talk to patients differently. Like if you were only a fire face, now the fire face is a very narrow, comes down on a very hard angle. And the key about fire faces is they're very quick to learn. The wide forehead is a sign of intellect, but the jaw indicates sensitivity. And what I would not say to a fire face is, look, you got three things going on. You got to jump on this right now. You're in big trouble. If you don't do something right now, you have no idea. I can't
hurt
use those
feelings.
words because you ain't coming back.
Yeah.
What I would say to them is, look, you've got three things going on, but we need to respect your sensitivity. We're going to start working in one area. Normally, I would give two or three things to support this, but let's use one and let's do a half dose just to respect your sensitivity. And I will tell you, Morgan, a tear comes out of the corner of the patient's eye, and they're, my God, somebody finally understands me, and they're all in. And I would be able to connect with them. And what I called it a faith circuit. We as physicians have to have faith in what we do. And the only way we get and maintain faith is we continue to learn.
Mm.
If you stop learning, you might as well stop living. At least that's
You're
my bucket
stagnant.
list. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're stagnant. Absolutely. So once you put in your due diligence and that person walks in and you shake their hand, they're going to feel the work you did and they're going to have faith in you. And when that faith circuit is connected, healing is enhanced exponentially. I had no problem cheating when it came to getting people healthy. I didn't care as long as it wasn't illegal or immoral. I was all in. And if words I used enhanced the person's ability to heal, then more power to them. Let's use more of those words. And that's our problem with our society. They were so into hate and hatred and anger and this person's wrong and this person's right. And
Judgment.
can we just,
Yeah.
yeah, we're just judging people. And it's harmful to the human race energetically. It's just not a healthy thing. And this gets into energy medicine, and this is why we are attracted to the lesser species like dogs and horses. They're not lesser species. They are so evolved over us. They will sense things. When horses get into a herd, they 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 will sync. There's an energetic syncing, and they all move together. It's called entrainment, and it has to be that one horse that is so evolved spiritually that everybody connects to that horse, and that horse will lead them all. And we need to respect the fact that there are people out there that have this ability, and usually they're older people. And we, of course, in our society in the States, they're poo-pooed. And, I'm 73 years old. I had, a week ago yesterday, I had my right hip replaced. So I'm sitting here with an ice pack on my hip.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, it's, and yet, as much as I don't like what's happening in my body, I love what's happening in my brain. I'm thinking thoughts that I've never thought before. And it's
It just
just
gets better and
a
better.
wonderful, oh, it does. It is just an amazing walk that I am on, and I get to walk it with this great lady in my life. Linda's my sweetheart, and she's a king face, which you can relate. You have some king quality. They're natural leaders, but the only gray in your life is in your closet. This is right and this is wrong. That is the king face energy, and their energy is when they come in as a patient, can you help me? How long does it take? What's it going to cost? Let's go. Don't want to talk about sports. Don't want to talk about the weather. Let's get to the point. So she could have been a absolutely unbelievably successful interior designer. She could have been a landscape architect. She could have been with a little training, a chef in any top restaurant. And she chose to be in the background and let me go up on stage and all my dreams. She's my tether. I'm a dreamer, and we bucket faces. We tend to, ADD is part of our, that's something good.
We
So
see
we're always
connections.
yeah, we need to be, we don't need anchors. And I
Yeah.
physically anchored myself, and there were some people in my life that anchored me at some points. And that wasn't a good thing for me. I need to be able to float, but I need to not float away. And so she's my tether, and she's chosen that path. And boy, to not honor that is categorically wrong. So we're sitting here today because of her. And she interviewed me to determine we were going to do this one or not. So we were both captivated by your starting point. I love it.
Oh, I'm so pleased. So you've mentioned a couple of different face shapes.
Yes.
There are 9.
Yes.
Do you mind walking us through what they are?
Sure.
A follow-up question is, on top of the 9 face shapes, your book does a beautiful job of illustrating each one, but then you also mention, as is present on my face, you can have combinations. How common is it to have a singular shape versus a combination of 2 or 3?
The least common is the single face. Most people have 2. Some have 3. I've had a few that had 4. In a perfect world, you'd be 1/9 of every face. No one's that. But each face shape, there's a kind of a blessing and a curse that goes with it. And so I'll do them alphabetically. We start with bucket, which is what I am. And you have some bucket quality also. Your jaws are a little wide, and that's where the king comes in. But the bucket is the individual who loves to put things in their bucket. We have a thirst for knowledge that's unquenchable. Do we overthink? Absolutely. We can think of creative solutions to every problem. We can think of creative problems for every solution. So we tend to overthink a little bit. And I love my bucket head. It's who I am. It's how I do life, and it's why I think the way I think. So again, we tend to overthink. Then we have an earth face, which is the bucket upside down. And these people are very down to earth. Their gift is their common sense, their down to earthness. Now, the male version of this tends to use humor as a crutch, and they make jokes about everything. The female version, they're Mother Earth. They want to take care of everyone. They forget to take care of themselves. So there's the downside of it. The fire face we already talked about. They're about sensitivity, and they're I can't eat that. That bothers me. They're always tough patients because they had 48 things wrong and you fixed 48 of them. Then they come in last Tuesday, I felt this like a knife in my left little toe. And I go, 48 things are better and you're bringing up your little toe. Well, that's because they're sensitive. And it's like, really? But you dance with the music and say, well, let's look at that. And acknowledging it is what they really wanted you to do. The iron face, this is the politician's face, a very square
Queen Elizabeth.
Face. Yes, Winston Churchill. Trump is an iron face. Putin's an iron face. Hillary is an iron face. They're very dedicated people. The 3 S's that I ascribe to, and I'm going to get into trouble here because there's people that hate Hillary and people that hate Trump, but get over it, people.
As example.
Using him as example. I'm not putting a stamp of approval on these people. I'm just saying. But they're strong, they're stable, they're stubborn. And, the stable is Putin's stable is Trump's stable is Hillary's stable. But just go away. And so, but that is their tendency. And they're all about getting the job done, but also recognizing everybody that helped them get there. So when Trump won this last time, and he's a megalomaniac, he's this, he's that, he's all about himself. He came out on that stage, and from behind him, 70 people, and then he named another 40 people. That's not what a megalomaniac and an egotistical person does. I know people are going to get pissed because they hate Trump, and I'm saying something nice about somebody they hate, and I'm thinking, why am I being castigated for that. I'm just observing, and that's the nature. They want to bring everybody up because they know the team won. That's the iron face. Then you have the jade face. This is a diamond shape. So jade is the hardest mineral, very hard mineral. And these people tend to be very hard. They're very aloof. They're very haughty. And the key with these is they get the job done. They tend to be very successful in anything they do, but they're not nice. They're it has to be their idea, and you just know. I had this gal come in, and she wanted acupuncture for some problem, and I said, "Look, I can do acupuncture. You can spend a lot of time and money, but in the exam I did, your body is testing that you're very acidic, which means you're stealing minerals. When the body's acidic, you steal minerals. Minerals are nature's painkillers, muscle relaxers, and tranquilizers, and all her problems were that. She couldn't rest at night. Her muscles were tight, and she had all this kind of stuff. And I said, look, if you just take this homeopathic formula called NatFaz, do 6 twice a day, melt them on your tongue, come back in 2 weeks. And if we still have a lot of issues, I'll do acupuncture. And she gave me that look, I'm never coming back look. I've seen it many times from patients. So she shows up 2 weeks later, which was a bit of a shock to me based on my visual interpretation of her face when she left the first time. She says, well, I didn't agree with anything. I wanted acupuncture. She says, but after I thought about it, I went online, did some research, and I found this stuff. And I started taking this stuff, and all my symptoms are gone. Now, what she took out of her purse was what I told her to get, which was homeopathic NatFaz. And I kind of sat there laughing on the inside and going, really? You had success with that? It had to be her idea. That's okay. She got well. And she went away because I don't like working with jade faces. But you can't be attached to what they say, and that's the key when it comes to jade face. King face, which is your strong jaw. This is the face of the natural leader. You can see both sides of the fence, very, very fair. But again, life's a little black and white. This is right and this is wrong, and there's no in between. So this is, you'll get the job done. Now, you're so laser focused on getting the job done. There's some bodies slewing to the side, not intentionally. You're just hyper focused, and I'm going to get to that goal. But again, it's an incredible face, and with my bucket and Linda's king quality, it's created a dynamic situation, and I'm very thankful for it. It's actually kind of cool. Moon face. This is the round face. These are the people that just go with the flow. They're the 9-to-5ers, and the world needs 9-to-5ers. We need people that go do their job with a smile on their face, and they come home and they make a meal and they get in front of the TV and they fall asleep with the plate on their lap. The world needs those because they're very adaptable. The problem is those people get taken advantage a lot of because they roll with everything. They don't want to create any conflict, where the king face looks for the conflict. If you're a running back as a king face, you're going to look for the guy to hit, not for the opening. You're going to go, look, who can I take out of the way? And then we have the tree face, which is very long, rectangular face. This face is the face of the individual that likes to grow on their own. They don't like to be trimmed back, but their gift to mankind is their ability to spread their branches and protect. The problem I had with my female tree faces, they were so into taking care of others, they forgot to take care of themselves. So I'd have to speak into their life, and I'd say, look, your passion is to help others. And they go, Dr. Todd, it is. Then I would say, well, what if you couldn't do that? And then again, the tear would come out of the corner. And I would say, look, let's spend some time on getting you really healthy so we can let you do what God put you on this earth to do. And they were all in. It was great. The last is the wall face. I never finished a treatment program with wall face. Once I got them through their problem, they were gone. It was like beating your head against the wall. And they're the protectors. This is the Idi Amin face. He was a wall face. They're like a large iron face, but from the side view, they're very flat. So they're the protectors. They will not. That's why the offensive and defensive linemen in football, they're virtually all wall faces, because they're the protectors. And one's trying to get to the target, the other one's trying to protect. they're the wall, the defensive wall, the offensive line, the offensive wall. So that's their nature. And because I practiced in St. Louis, I had a lot of the football players, professional football players, and I had one guy, and massive guy. You don't know how big someone is until a 6'5", 315-pound man stands in front of you. And I'm not small. I'm 6'2", and at least I was before I got old. But it's unbelievable how big they are. And this guy was a wall face, and I was explaining what was going on. He was having some issues with memory and took a lot of hits. He had some traumatic brain injury kind of stuff. And so we got working with him, and he was all in, and I was explaining his face, and his wife just slugs him in his big arm. He said, "I told you that's how you are." And so he got over the hump, and I never saw him again. I helped him, but he never came back. Once the fire's out, they don't care about the potential for another fire starting. They just move on to the next wall or next thing to protect. So those are the 9 faces, and it gave me that again, that starting point on number one, how to talk to them, but number two, what's the best therapy that would be effective for a particular individual.
Yeah. How will they receive it the most efficiently in the way that they need?
Everybody's totally answer your question. Everybody's skeptical of face diagnosis until they have it done, and then they go, "Holy cow! There's no way to know that." And it's like, okay.
That was powerful to just, and the fact is I had not spoken to you. I had not emailed you. You just saw 3 pictures of my face that I snapped kind of haphazardly that morning to fill out the form. It was incredible. Do you see?
It is incredible. And yet it's like reading Russian. If you don't know how to read it, you can't read it. Once you learn, you got it.
But you're offering classes, which is fantastic. Yes. I will ask you about that in a second. When we're going through these 9 faces, I couldn't help but wonder, are there, like you mentioned in your own marriage, have you noticed trends in, good relationship between face shapes or in careers even? Are certain face shapes better, like you said, the wall face and offensive line?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a very small subgroup, obviously. But, I've been asked many times by using this in dating sites. And does this go with this? And I go, maybe. It's never been my focus, Morgan. So it's kind of hard for me to put my head in that. It had nothing to do with health, and yet it could have everything to do with health, because if you choose the wrong mate, it's painful, and both. For me, it was costly, and it was emotionally drained my bank account emotionally. But the answer is, I think it's significant, but I have not put the energy and the effort into it to really take it to the next level. As I mentioned, I've been asked I'm entering the world of business and knowing what can this technology be utilized. I was being interviewed by a business leader from Australia. And matter of fact, I'm going to Australia to give a course in the beginning of next year. I'm so excited about this. But he was talking about how to use it from a business standpoint. And I said, well, it's very valuable. And he was looking at it from a management, because that's what he is. Manages a whole team of people. Fascinating individual. Classic buckethead. So he just loves the process of thinking. So we connected very well. But he said, it'd be great for me as a business owner to understand this. And I said, yeah, but you got to look at it from the other side. If your boss is a king face, then you got to know what things to say if you want to scale up in that company, you got to impress that guy. And that guy's impressed by efficiency, by getting on the money, getting the job done, doing it quick, doing it efficiently. And if your boss is a bucket face, then he likes to hear what's in your head, because we like to know what's going on.
The details. Yeah.
Yeah, the details. It's very, very important. So, and if you're a salesman and you're calling on a king face, what you do is you walk through that door and walk up and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm with so-and-so. I know you're busy. This is what I'm bringing to you. This is the best price I can give you. You do not have to come back. I'm going to respect your time. I know you're busy. This is the best I can do. Leave the piece of paper, turn around, walk to the door. And before your hand hits that doorknob, he's going to say, excuse me, come back here. And he's going to buy from you, because that was the language that he could connect to. He was respected energetically. Now, if you call on me, you got to call on me 3 times, because I got to think about it, because I got to think about it. So knowing that when you call on someone, it can give you an advantage. And it's just, it sounds almost sinister on some levels, but it's really not. It's about communication.
Mhm.
And we have so many more ways to communicate, and communication is so piss poor in this day and age. It's just unreal. I mean, when you call you've you can't get to a human voice, and finally, when you get to human voice, you're having this conversation 10 minutes into it, you realize you're talking to a computer, and it's some bot, and I lose my mind. I just
Yeah.
give me a human voice.
Yeah.
It just,
Real
yeah,
connection.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's so important. People want to be heard. People want to know. The reason this is so popular and becoming exponentially more popular is people want to know about themselves. Even though you already knew the things I told you, seeing it in this kind of detail, in this kind of format, it's got to be like, wow, this is amazing. Now,
Yeah.
what do you take from this? Well, that's the next step in your call. Now, from a doctor-patient standpoint, I was looking at trying to help people get over a health hump somewhere, and this really gave me that starting point, kind of where to hit it, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
It's good to be seen. Like you said, that validation always feels good. And
Yes.
oftentimes we do know ourselves better than sometimes we give ourselves credit for. But understanding that we're being perceived correctly can be really
Yeah.
powerful in and of
Yeah.
itself. You also mentioned each of these face shapes have unique gifts to give to the world. What
Hmm.
happens when someone doesn't fulfill that gift?
They get sick.
And you see that on the
Plain and
face?
simple. I do. I do.
Interesting. What
Yeah,
are
you'll see it.
common tells?
Indented temples. Temples are about spleen function, but they're about ability to experience happiness. We see these lines that you and I both have. These are called, well, this is from traditional Chinese medicine. And the Western medical term for these lines is nasal labial lines. And I just thought, I can't put that in my book. It just sounds like a vaginal issue to me. So I thought, I'm going to leave the TCM, traditional Chinese medicine term, of Faling. Faling means purpose and spiritual strength.
Mm.
You and I have found our purpose. We're living our purpose. We have immense spiritual strength. And nothing to do with religion. Don't put those synonymous, because they're not. Religion is about fanaticism. Spirituality is about balance and peace and love and all these kind of things. Now, I choose a certain part of a religious walk that is very personal to me, and I enjoy that walk, and it gives me, it handles a lot of my decisions I don't have to think about, because I know that's not right. I wouldn't do that based on where I put my stake in the sand from a faith standpoint. So I'm not saying don't be religious, but be spiritual first, and let religion, choose a path. And if you're a Buddhist, be a good one. If you're Islamic, be a good one. If you're a Christian, be a good one. I'm Sunday, I'm going to write a book, Stupid Christians I Have Known. It's going to be brilliant. I just statements come out of yeah. Like, we don't need to go there, but it is. There's something I refer to as Christian speak, and obviously I'm Christian based on what I'm saying here. But when a Christian says, when you go up to someone and you ask them for something, they say, "Well, let me pray about that," and I want to say to them, "Shut up! What you're saying is, oh, you're just using Christian speak, so you're uncomfortable with saying no, so you're going to run away under the guise of I need to pray about it. No, you don't need to pray about it. I'm asking, can you help me move furniture on Friday? you know,
Right.
you don't have to pray about that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, I call that
You do need
Christian
to think
speak.
about it.
Yeah,
I
think
I
about it
love
and
that
say
you
no.
say that because and you said the gifts imbued by a creator, and that's
Yeah,
it that is encompassing of all faiths.
it
We
is.
were
It is.
created by a higher power, something greater than us. And I
Yes.
think I'm also Christian, but not in the sense that I don't attend church anymore. I find my walk with God happens in the presence of horses and in nature at the barn. Um,
And why not? Why not? What a
right.
better
And
what a
so
what a better walk
all
that
of
is
that
than
to say is I think my purpose is to go be a blessing.
yeah.
That came from a pastor who I knew many years ago. But I loved that he always said that, because it's not just look for the blessing in things or be grateful. It's go actively be the thing that is a blessing to someone else in their life.
Yeah.
This is an action. And you said that too. Go be a good Muslim. Go be a good Buddhist. Go
Absolutely.
do. It's a verb.
Yeah, it
So
is.
that
It
idea
is.
of
Yeah,
enacting that
absolutely.
gift, that's huge.
It's kind of like you wake up in the morning, I'm gonna go find a friend today. No, that ain't gonna work. you know, now go be a friend to someone, and you'll get all the friends you want. So
Absolutely.
it's it's that mental starting point, and these following lines really are, ironically, sometimes the diagnostic indicators on a face is what should be there and isn't.
Mhm.
So if you're 60 years old, you should have these following lines. If you
I was going to
don't,
say, isn't that just part of aging?
yeah, but it come with aging comes wisdom. With wisdom comes purpose,
Mm.
and if you have any leaning towards correctness, spiritual correctness, these will manifest themselves. So Vladimir Putin, he's a iron face, strong, stable, stubborn. We'll debate the stable. I get that, and he has no falling lines, and he
Wow.
should. So if your purpose is to line your pockets with cash, you will not develop these lines. If your purpose in life is to make a difference in life and try to help others, then these lines will come flying out. I've seen these lines in 12-year-olds, and these
Really?
people are powerfully gifted young people. And when you see them that early, it gives me chills. You just don't see it. And when you do, you realize this person is put on this earth with a very deep purpose and understanding what they need to do. So,
Does it work
you
the
know,
other way though? In my report, you in capitals were like, do not ever inject filler into these lines. Have you seen
yeah,
it go the other way where someone will
yeah,
mess with their
you
face
can,
and it will affect
you
their
can.
spirituality?
Yeah, and let me give you a classic example, and we'll use the nose as an example. The nose represents power, drive, ego, and leadership. And the basic tenet in face reading is more, less is less. So if you have a bigger nose, you have more of that. Does that mean if you have a small nose, you can't be a leader? No, you just got to work a lot harder to get there. So, in the basic more, less is less mentality, I'm going to say two words, and you tell me what comes to your mind. And those two words are Michael Jackson. Man had a amazing power, an incredible leader, an incredible nose. And at the end, his nose, talk about cut off your nose to spite your face. He had none of that. And this beautiful human being is dead at age 50 because he can't sleep and he's given a drug to put you under to take your hip out.
Wow, yeah.
And I just experienced that a week ago. So, you know, yeah, he lost everything. And it's sad. And he didn't have to do that. Now, there's some blackness in this guy. And I did his face, and he had some serious issues with his father. It was a very toxic. Again, I don't know the story, but my guess is he had a less than stellar relationship with his dad.
Interesting. Are face shapes hereditary? We often have this debate in horses where we have a certain face shape, like an Arabian horse, for example. They really like that dish shape, and that comes with
Mhm.
a hot horse, a sensitive horse, a very emotional
Mhm.
horse. And
Yeah,
people will say, oh, well, the face shape doesn't go with the temperament, it goes with the breed. And I guess my rebuttal to that is we have selectively bred these horses for both physical and temperamental traits. And so, yes, they do go
right.
together. I don't know, chicken
True.
or egg. Is that true
Yeah,
with humans? Are face shapes hereditary?
they are, and they should be, and they have to be. Because you are part of your mom and part of your dad. I mean, the XY or XX chromosomes. I mean, the male determines, the sperm determines if that embryo. All females, all embryos are female. They're X, and then around 6 weeks, the sperm that fertilize that ovum will donate either an X chromosome, and the baby comes out a female, or it donates a Y chromosome. It's actually a very spiritual, correct concept. We men are governed by a brain chemical called dopamine. It's that I'm going to protect you. I'm going to answer your questions. I'm going to do all this kind of stuff. And when it gets messed up, then we got ADD because our brains need dopamine to focus. Now, the female is governed by um, a brain chemical called serotonin. It's the connector. It's what you when you nurse that baby, that serotonin and oxytocin just kick out, and you have this intimate, instant connection to that child. Where we men take a while to like this thing that poops and pees and sleeps, and eats, and so. But here's the interesting: protecting others raises dopamine. Serving others raises serotonin. We are supposed to be different. The man is supposed to be different. We have to not care about something. And one of the ways I explain this when I lecture on the difference between men and women, which is a hilarious lecture, I might add. Colonial times, you're sitting on a porch with your spouse and 2 kids, and there's a deer in the meadow, and the mother says, "Oh, Mom, that deer is beautiful." And Mom says, "Yes, it's beautiful." And the guy's looking at the deer, and he goes, "It's beautiful, but I got to kill it." It can't have that connection because the male brain has to be damaged to do some of the things that we do. So it's how it's supposed to happen. So when you say, I feel this, or my wife says, I really feel this, I sense this, and I go, I don't sense that. I'm never going to sense that. That's just illogical. And it turns out she's right. It pisses me off a little bit that she's right every time. But it is the nature of the beast. But it's how we were built, and it's how we were supposed to be.
That's such an interesting perspective. I think I sense what you just said. I've always believed that internally to be true. It's interesting to hear you from your bucket face perspective walk me through why that's the case. Like you said, your wife
it's a scientific fact.
Yeah.
It's how we were built and how we were made and what our creator wanted from us. So that is our nature to protect. Do we take it too far? Sure, absolutely. And then we have emotions that tie to this. And you'll see a lot of females. So there are 9 face shapes, and then there are 21 features on the face. And each feature has a duality to it. The ears, for instance, correspond to your kidney from a physiological standpoint. But from a psychological, they had to do with fear and risk taking. So if your ears are huge like mine, I'm very comfortable taking risks. I once had 5 mortgages. And other people, oh my God, 5 mortgages, like, I'll lose my mind. And I'm going, it's just money, and eventually it'll all go away. I'm actually down to 1 now. So it's a great and wonderful thing. These features have this duality. So many times I'll see female patients and they have real puffiness over their left, in their upper eye, above upper eyelid, this area, real full and puffy with your gallbladder. And the emotion of the gallbladder is anger. Women tend to internalize anger. Women lose their gallbladder 1 ratio. I remember reading that statistic, and obviously as a buckethead, I go, oh, what's that all about? That's illogical. It makes no sense from a physiological standpoint until you factor in the emotional aspect and the gender specificity to it. Women internalize anger. They lose their gallbladder.
We're not allowed to be angry. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When we get angry at men, we get killed sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a learned phenomenon, not a healthy learn, I might add. But a man will externalize anger, and we do stupid things and end up in prison. Now, given the choice, I'd rather lose my gallbladder. I mean, we were going to this big church in St. Louis, and the pastor was complaining of gut issues. And my wife finally leans over to me, and she goes, "Oh, what's going on?" He says, "It's gallbladder." So a couple weeks later, Pastor Jeff's not in church. And the pastor's up and said, "Well, Pastor Jeff's in the hospital. He's having his gallbladder removed." And my wife, Linda, just nails me. How'd you know that? And I said, "Well, he can't externalize anger. He's a pastor. He's going to lose his entire congregation. So he lost his gallbladder. Should have let some anger out in a different way." So, women don't handle anger correctly, nor do men, just in a different way. We externalize it and hurt people, and women internalize it and hurt themselves, which is a serotonin kind of comment. You're all about serving and, we're all about protecting. So these things mesh together in such a profound way. I just, it's interesting. And I think in the animal world, we can learn so much from what animals do if we just would observe. Buffalo
to regulate.
Yeah, absolutely. When a storm comes on a pasture area and there are buffalo there, what do the buffalo do? All other animals run for the hills. They run right to it.
Mhm.
Let that sink in. Then run right to the eye of that storm. Why? Because it's the quickest way to get through it.
Mhm.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
how many emotional dollars have I spent running away from problems? If I just ran at them, I would have saved a lot of time, money, and
Yeah.
heartache.
We
And
see it in horses
we
too. If we have a horse that's stressed, they will seek out a trusted member of the herd to
yes.
co-regulate somehow, whether that's sharing
Yep.
air or grooming together to help them regulate their heart rate and nervous system and find peace again.
Mhm.
How often do
And
we do
even
that as humans? We're terrible at it.
absolutely. Now, I grew up in central Wisconsin. I now live in northern Wisconsin, and crows are all over the place here, and they're nasty little birds, big birds actually. But they will attack eagles. They will absolutely just bombard eagles, and the eagles are flying and trying to get away from it. The eagle could stop and just kill the bird, but they don't. What an eagle does when they're being attacked by these crows, they go higher.
Hmm.
They go so high that the they go so above it that the crow can't fly that high, and they just drop off. What a message that is. How about we
Wow.
should maybe take take the high road?
Yeah.
So buffaloes and eagles
Wow.
and horses and dogs
That's
can,
such a cool metaphor. I did not know that.
isn't it?
Thank you for
Isn't it?
sharing.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I think I think we think uh, we are the owners of dogs, and I go, no, they got us trained. They do a good job of training us,
Oh, they do.
and I love that the energy. And don't we love the energy? I mean, you obviously work with horses, and I think that is just there's nothing more majestic than watching a horse run. It is just, especially if you see it in slow motion, you see those muscles and the churning and the synchronicity of those hooves and the power, and yet the gentleness that is there. I think that's just fantastic.
Yeah, the sound. Yes.
Yes.
I'm never not in awe.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
were a couple of other things you pointed out as individual features on my
Mhm.
face report, and one
Mhm.
really stuck out to me because there's no way you could have known. Um, my pupils were not level,
Level. Yep.
and you mentioned not PTSD, which is what I had been thinking I had been dealing with and working on in therapy over the last decade, but rather something more like an emotional TBI. When I was
Yeah.
22, I got married and my husband committed suicide a few months later.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been
I
something I've been carrying with me for a while. And so when you said that, I'm like, okay, what is an emotional TBI? I didn't know that was possible. And how do I go about confronting that differently than I would if it were, PTSD classic?
Yeah, well, certainly PTSD could be a factor. I didn't really see PTSD. I saw pretty dramatic concussion, TBI,
Mm,
traumatic brain injury. Now, the injury can be a physiological, you get in a car wreck and go through the windshield kind of thing.
mm,
But I believe you can injure your brain with the same veracity emotionally as if you slammed your head on the concrete. And one of the most powerful things that when I work with folks that have this, is to bring it to their attention and realize there's a physiological component to what's going on. You can try to lay on the psychological, and sometimes it's very important. But when you have this, and I've got to pull your face up from a picture standpoint and just take a peek at something. So emotionally, uh, there's some despair that creeped in on this. And depression is, I'm depressed. This is the reason why. Despair, there's a bit of a hopelessness component, and suicide is the ultimate causative factor in that regard. So, knowing that you've actually had a brain injury, and it is not, it certainly was depressing, but there's some despair. There is such healing power in knowing that's what's going on, and that's the starting point
mm,
that you work at from helping someone get past that, is to make them aware that that's what it is. And is there PTSD? There could be. Um, I don't see the classic signs of PTSD. I sure see the classic signs of a traumatic brain injury, however.
interesting. Okay. Um,
But you want to let that word despair float in your brain and let your body heal itself.
okay. Okay. You also mentioned that the uneven pupil level could be a sign of seizures or a swollen side of your brain.
Well, the brain is swollen.
Okay.
It isn't. It could be a sign. It is swollen. And what happens when there's swelling? There's weight, and it causes your brain to get heavy on one side, and it causes your pupil to drop down. And I'll be debated by a very learned neuropsychologist, and I'll just say, yeah, fine, you're wrong. I don't say you're wrong, but I got 45 years, and you know, you don't want to battle with me on these kind of things because I know what I'm talking about. And that sounds so arrogant, but I'm a buckethead, so we love to think. I guess arrogance,
Yeah.
try to steer clear of that, but it does come out once in a while.
Well, if taking your approach isn't going to harm anything and potentially help, I mean, what's the harm in
What is the
trying?
harm?
So,
Yeah,
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the insight because I've been taking a really active role into trying to incorporate this really awful, devastating thing that happened and make positive
yep,
meaning out of it,
yep,
so that his life and his death means something for others in the future. So, knowing
absolutely,
how that
absolutely.
impacted me and how I can heal from it allows me then to potentially extend that information to someone else who might benefit from it too. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's very important, and it's and that is the key. And the words we use are so important and so powerful. And one of the examples I use is you you have a friend and they're suicidal. You don't know they're suicidal, but you speak some words that changes them. You speak kindness into their life, and that kindness causes her not to kill herself. And then she has a baby, and then that baby has a baby, and then that baby has a baby, and that next baby grows up to be president of the United States. And at the brink of a nuclear holocaust, he steps in and stops it because you said something nice 5 generations ago. Get teary talking about it. Now, the point I want to make, and now I want to make the hair on the back of your head stand up. How do you know you already didn't do it?
mm,
We do it every
wow,
day.
wow,
What does it cost to be kind? It doesn't cost a thing.
yeah.
And what difference can you make? Well, you may save the world.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Now I'm gonna get teary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
you know
amazing what just one word that you like you said, you can say to someone that will impact the whole trajectory of a generation or a nation or a world.
yeah. And how
It's
do you know you
incredible.
didn't already do it?
Yeah. Very cool.
That just this that'll give you chills. It
It
gave me
will.
chills.
It
I mean,
will. I was
it's
gonna
my leg is hurting. That's why I'm tearing up.
I was going to ask about the other smaller features that you pointed out on my face. Like my mom also got a kick out of my brow bone. She's like, yeah, you can be a little defiant and slightly
Yeah,
like you don't say, mom,
yeah, yeah,
or ears. My eyebrows, for example, you pointed out the outer corner of them are not quite as filled in. Obviously, this is makeup, but
yeah.
I use eyebrow pencil on my eyebrows every morning because it goes blonde. I have hairs there, but they're not as visible as the rest of my eyebrow. I'm an
Right.
only child, so how could I possibly have strong sibling support?
Yeah. Yeah, if they're not like my eyebrows are very thick and thin to the outside, so it's called a Hertog sign in Western medicine, means low thyroid function, but it also can represent a lack of sibling support. I love my brothers, but they were no support. They were a hindrance to me growing up, and I would take a bullet for them. But if you're an only child, obviously there's a lack of sibling support. So you got to ask yourself, is it thyroid or is it a lack of sibling support? So
So
it's
how do I
a
go about providing myself with sibling support when I don't have siblings? Can I
it's
build a
just the card.
community that would fulfill that
Yeah,
need?
yeah, it's the cards you're dealt, and how you play it is your call. You know,
Okay, interesting.
and there's in life where Archie Bunker had the greatest line ever. I'm quoting Archie Bunker here. He said, "I got no problems with mankind. It's people I can't stand." So people are hard. It's very difficult, and then you bring them into your life, and as children, and they bring guys, and they're like all husbands, and there's this ever expanding thing, and you got to dance with all these integers in this equation of life, and it's difficult. But the key is to stay in your lane. And there's a book called "Stay in Your Lane," fascinating book, and he's a therapist. I think he was a pastor at one point too. But when anybody comes into his office and they have a problem, he takes an 8.5, 11 piece of paper and draws 2 lines out of making 3 columns. And the top of the first column, he goes, "What's mine?" And the second one is, "What's theirs?" And the third one is, "What's God's?" So most of our problems come from not staying in our lane. We have to handle what's ours. It's when we try to handle what's theirs. My kids, you just do this, life would be so much better. No, that's theirs. That's theirs. And then what's God is when you have things in your life like a suicide. My first 2 children died. That's a what's God column. Like, I don't understand that. I maybe never will, but please help me, kind of thing. So those 3 columns, if we stay in our lane and deal with what's ours, life's really good. It's when we try to fix everybody else's problems, which I spent my entire life doing as a doctor. Obviously, there in families and in patients, there's a difference, but it's staying in your lane is a very important thing.
That's true for horsemanship too. I feel like a lot of people miss the forest for the trees. You go out to spend time with your horse, and we're so focused on fixing, oh, they're not carrying themselves, or they're tighter on this side and they're not picking up the correct lead, or they're not collecting the way that I want them to, or that could have been smoother. And we're so focused on the details and fixing them that we forget to just enjoy the fact that, hey, how cool is this, that this animal that doesn't speak our language is letting us ride on their backs when they really don't have to.
Yeah.
And you get to be together and look at all the things that you have accomplished. So I think that's a really healthy way to reframe it. And I think it's a good reminder for the horsemen that will be listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. How do you balance that? As a doctor, you're looking for problems, but in my perspective, in teaching and training, I like positive reinforcement. I like to look for the stuff that's working well. How do you balance the two? And do you find that one mindset versus the other affects your mental health?
It did in the beginning of my career. I took everybody's problems on my shoulders and took them home and became a little bit of an ogre to live with. And I had to learn to separate that. I got so good at it that I would leave one treatment room, go to the next, and I couldn't remember who I just left. It's called present time consciousness. I was so focused on the person in front of me. I got extremely good at it because I was intentional with it. And I think this has to do with just that intention. What is your intention? Well, your intention is driven by what you pay attention to. And the example I use when I'm lecturing doctors, particularly male doctors, I said, look, at the end of your workday, if you go home and spend 3 hours on the computer before bed watching pornography, and then you wake up and have an argument with your wife, and then you go in to the office and somebody shows interest in you, this is not good, because your intention is driven by what you were paying attention to, and what you were paying attention to was not a wholesome, healthy kind of thing. So the key is being very intentional in everything that you do. And that intention will drive you in directions that are correct, provided what you've paid attention to is correct and pure and worthy. So it's a constant effort that has to be there. I'd love to tell you I got this down. I don't. I screw up just as readily as I did when I was younger. But in less damaging ways now. I can kind of stay in my lane kind of thing. No, it's not mine. And so it is about being intentional.
I suppose that's kind of the ethics of face reading. Why are you looking at someone's face? What information are you trying to read, or why are you seeking to learn this about this person? Is it so that you can help them? Right. Or is it so you have an ulterior motive?
To manipulate them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. My daughter and I had this debate writing the book, I should say, about, she likes to do it off photographs, and I like live. There's an energy I can pick up, but now I'm kind of forced in my, I'm not retired, but in my retirement, I'm only looking at pictures, and now I love it. It's static, nothing changes. I can lock in. And I love not knowing anything about the individual, because when you know things, you start seeing things, and you try to be as
Mm,
intellectually honest. But that is hard. It's hard to be intellectually honest. And as for a buckethead, it's almost impossible to be intellectually honest because we think all the time. But you know, I think it's using facial diagnosis can be such a tremendous tool in helping you communicate with someone that's in front of you if you use it correctly. Can it be used incorrectly? Sure. But
do you think that's
as
why
we,
there's this craving for older, more traditional holistic medicine like this that we're seeing now in our society?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, when I started in practice, people didn't want to be in pain. Um,
Who
it
does?
went from that, yeah, who does? It went from that, I want to be healthy. And then it morphed from I want to be healthy, I want to be vibrantly healthy. And it morphed from
Mm,
there to I want to feel at 73 how I felt at 43.
mm,
And I get that because I've been both places, and I think that's a very good thing. And the key is we've got an industry that doesn't want us to have self responsibility. Take this pill, you're going to be fine. Eat what you
mm,
want, but do a GLP-1, all the weight will just fall off. However, you can never stop taking that GLP-1. If you do, all the weight's going to come back.
mm,
Think about that advertising. That's a drug sale forever. This drugs were made to get you over a problem.
mm,
And then the birth control pill came out in the late 50s, early 60s, and Big Pharma lit up. Oh my God. People got to take this they got to take it every day for their entire formative, when they can give birth.
mhm,
And it changed the whole mentality of Big Pharma to controlling conditions rather than correcting conditions. And I think that's sinister. I think it's toxic. It is
mm.
just so that it's an abhorrent entity. And I want to drive as far away from that as east is from west. I want no part of that kind of thinking. I want patients that are self-responsible. And I'm not naive. I realize, I practice in St. Louis, and East St. Louis is not it's downtrodden economically in all different ways. But how do I help that black lady from East St. Louis with 6 kids from 4 different fathers? I would treat her for nothing. My heart is out there, and I would do what I can. She doesn't know the difference between a carbohydrate and a protein. I'm not slamming her intellectually. I'm just pointing out truths here. So I had a very elitist practice. My patients were healthier, wealthier, higher educated. It was a joyous way to do life. And yet I had this spiritual conundrum. How do I help that person that has no concept of health and they bought into big pharma? I take this and we'll control the diabetes. How about changing your diet, changing your lifestyle, and not have diabetes? It's a very lifestyle oriented entity, and it's totally fixable. I fixed it every day of my career without metformin. Oh my God, you can't treat diabetes without metformin. Well, actually, you can. It's called lifestyle, it's called nutrition and doing the right thing at the right time. So, when you're up against that kind of sinister energy, it's kind of tough, but you just got to love them because love will override everything. So I did.
I love
I
that.
love you. So I'm going to teach Christian, I love you.
It's it's true with horses too, even if you don't
Sure.
know exactly what you should be training or why or how. If you show
Mhm.
up and you have positive intentions and you just tell your
Yeah.
horse like, "Hey, we don't know each other, but I really like you and I like being around you." That
Yeah.
sinks in over time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where I started with my 2-year-old when I brought her home. She kicked me about 30 seconds after I handed the check over for her. And every I couldn't be in the pen with her. She had not really been around people, and after work, I would just go out there and start reading my work emails out loud to her from my
Yeah.
cell
Yeah.
phone. Just like, "I'd rather be out here with you than sitting at home on my couch doing this," and
Yeah.
she's
Absolutely.
my bestie now.
Yeah. Yeah. She heard your voice and
She
the
did,
tone of your
yeah.
voice and
Show
picked up
people up.
those subtle energies that are so important.
Yeah. Um, for someone who wants to learn about face reading or is curious about what their face is saying about them, what should they do?
Go to WTFWhyTheFace.com. And we have lots of things there. You can actually take a course and to learn to read faces. I mean, obviously we charge for this. I can read your face in several different ways. I can just read the shape of your face, and that's very inexpensive. We have this thing out right now called Buy 555. So for $5.55, you'd upload your pictures, and I said, well, you're a bucket king fire. And giving you descriptions, and people love it. And then you can have your face read, and I can give you the report that you got. I charge one fee for that. Now, if I also give that 6 to 8 page written report, plus I physically call you and walk you through it, because so many people, they'll buy the cheaper version and they'll go, Dr. Todd, I want to talk to you and I want to ask a couple of questions. We just move it up to the next mark. So you can go as far as you want to go, and let yourself go as deep as you want to go deeply into this thing. But again, the key is we all read faces, and when you can enhance your abilities in any area of expertise, I think it's going to help you in life.
Do you offer courses to help the participant develop their own face reading skills?
Yeah, we have a course on that.
Okay.
It's involved, and it's very well done. I had it professionally filmed by a videographer that is so skilled. He does all my videos. Matter of fact, he is the best face reader I've never trained. He just has filmed everything. And his name is JJ, and JJ is absolutely a brilliant face reader. He's the hit of every party he goes to because he starts reading faces. And he did it just through osmosis, filming me reading faces and filming the course. And the course, you'll see me live on stage reading faces, and there's lots of different aspects to it that will help you go from point A to point Z. And you can go with whatever direction you want. As a physician, there's great things there to help you. If you see this, these are things that can help that particular health problem. But for someone that wants to know who's on their team, what their face shape is, to know that, you will speak differently to that individual if you know the shape of their face. So it can really enhance the health of a company. And that's why I'm breaking into that world, that business world. I have no idea where it's going to go, but I'm sure looking forward to the travel. I'm a journey guy. For bucket faces, goal setting is a waste of time, because once I reach a goal, I go, I'm bored. What's next?
Yeah.
For me, it's the journey that gives me the joy. Once I get there, I'm bored.
Very cool.
I'm okay with that.
So it sounds like learning to read faces has really changed everything for you, not just your practice, but now your retirement or lack thereof, and the journey path forward through that. What do you wish other people understood about reading faces that, when you tell people what you do you feel like it's commonly misunderstood initially, or?
Not so much anymore, because I have this reputation, and you can't buy a reputation. You have to earn it. And I've done the due diligence. I've taken the tough walks, and at this point in my career, I'm very accepted simply because I'm known to be good at this. But when you take it and learn it for yourself, it's really about kind of, I have the word light, and we want to be a light in this world. And there was, I love this. There's a story that's told in a book by Mark Batterson. He's a pastor from Washington, D.C., I think. Could be wrong about that. But anyways, he tells this story about these group of missionaries. They refer to themselves as one-way missionaries. They packed their belongings in a wooden coffin, because they knew when they went to preach the gospel, the odds of them coming home was zero, and they were going to be killed. And so this particular missionary named A.W. Milne was his name. A.A. Milne did Winnie the Pooh. I don't know if he's any relation, but A.W. And he just had to go to the New Hebrides, and you want to think Shrunken Heads here. This was it. And he was, in fact, buried in his coffin, but it was 35 years later. And the locals on the tombstone, and this is what I want written on my tombstone, and they carved on his tombstone, when he came, there was no light. When he left, there was no darkness. And I think our job is to be a light and use love to keep that light burning. And,
Hmm.
good things will happen. Good things will happen for horses, for dogs, and for humans.
I would agree. After reading so many thousands of faces, what gives you the most hope about humanity, about being that lightness?
I believe humans are fantastically good. There's just a greatness and a goodness to the great majority of people. Now, the bad guys get the press, and they're on TV and Fox News and MSNBC, and then some of them get put in charge of countries, and they're even more toxic. But the majority of the people that are praying that they're going to have a servant's heart and they're going to go out there and serve, they're what that's what the world is made up of, and I want to honor those people. Look, I love my country, my government. You know, I I think people go with the right mentality, but they come out incredibly multi-millionaires, never making more than 300 grand a year. How do they do that? Good investing? I don't think so. Just I have some disdain for that, but I gotta let that go and just focus in on the people that are really really good, and the majority of people are. Of the billions and billions of people, a very very minuscule amount are bad, but they get all the press.
That's true. But it's comforting to know that you see so many faces. There are more good
Oh,
ones than.
there's now, ironically, in news, if it bleeds, it leads is the moniker they use. What we get the most feedback and views on are the criminals. And I go,
Mm.
there was this kid, Andrew McGann is his name. He killed a couple in Arkansas, stabbed them to death, and the two young kids got away. And my wife brings this picture on a Saturday morning and says, JJ wants you to read this face. And I look at the picture and I go, yeah, I'm going to pass. And she said, well, you have to read it. I said, I'm going to pass. This guy's a bad guy. I don't want to read his face. And she's, well, then once you read his face, I'm not going to tell you what he did, but just read his face. So I read his face. And within 3 days, we had 1.3 million views on this kid. By the end of the week, we had 2 million views. And he was just a horrible human being. I mean, just as awful of a face that I've ever read. And I hate reading those faces, but it it got it got 2 million views. We read the astronauts that went into space farther than anybody's ever had.
Yeah, I
Nobody
love
watched them.
those.
And nobody watched them.
Really? Oh, they were so
We had
interesting.
10, 12,000. But
A lot of king faces in that group.
yeah, there were. Absolutely. And you'd expect that. These are all natural leaders. So
Yeah.
they have to have that face.
Well, I
Their
guess the
push,
takeaway
their
is then
leadership.
be a good person. It will reflect on your face.
It really will, and nothing that happens in your life isn't going to show up somehow written on your face. It's a microsystem, and it's a very accurate accounting of what's happened in your life, and it has some predictability to it. If you see certain things, these things are going to come your way. So I use that from a health standpoint with a great deal of acumen, but it's so beneficial on so many levels. There's just the universality of face reading is profound. It just applies everywhere, and I love being part of it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your
Oh,
wisdom with me and my listeners. My hope is that, I found this tool from you to pair nicely with my understanding of horse whorls. So I know
absolutely.
who I am and how I communicate and what I value. And I know the
Yeah,
same for my horse. And I can find points of intersection there that we both enjoy, that we're on the same page with. So that's my hope for
yeah,
everyone. It makes it that much easier to show up with love.
absolutely. Love's the operative word. It's what we want to strive for. Totally.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. Oh, my pleasure.